For Palestinians, until September of this year, and this changes in part as a consequence of the campaigning that's been done, but it's not, I'm not claiming it as a big victory, it's not, so I don't want to kind of say this is magnificent. But as a part of that campaign, the Israeli Defense Forces, up until September of this year, used to treat all Palestinians under 16 as children, and those from 16 onwards as adults. And very frequently, and I'll just read you some of the experiences that they confronted and Palestinian children and young people face in the situation when they're confronted by the Israeli army. Typically, they are charged with offences like throwing stones. Throwing stones at the wall, believe it or not, is deemed to be a chargeable offence. They're often arrested in the middle of the night. These are teenagers that we're talking about. Taken away without any parental accompaniment, not knowing the destination that they're going to. Something like 60% of those young people are actually taken into Israel, which is against the Geneva Convention, which says quite explicitly that an occupying force is not allowed to deport people from the territory in which they reside. They'll also, when they are arrested, be treated absolutely horrendously. In recent statistics which have been released, somewhere in excess of 90% of them had their hands bound. They were blindfolded. They were physically punched and ill-treated in the course of being transported, not knowing where they were going to. And as I said, parents didn't know where those children were going. In the course of the interrogations that they face, they're told that if they don't plead guilty, then they'll face a more serious charge, and they will face, therefore, the possibility of a much lengthier sentence. So with great reluctance, but in that context, a very difficult situation to negotiate, they plea bargain, and they opt for a lesser charge in order that they will hope to return to their parents and their families more soon than if they pleaded not guilty and tried to fight the case. And that's the kind of things that happens. As I said, 60-odd% of them arrested between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning, suffering verbal abuse, strip searches, being threatened, and so on. And then often, when they are actually forced into making these confessions, actually presented with documents that are written in Hebrew, which, although they may know some words of Hebrew, the overwhelming majority of those children don't read or don't understand written Hebrew, and they sign those documents without being aware of the consequences that they face. This is the kind of society, if you like, that we're seeing in Israel, and the way in which young people and children are being treated. And it's something which has brought the condemnation of quite senior sort of figures in UNICEF, the United Nations organization, and from elsewhere. But the root cause of this is undoubtedly the actions by the Israeli government, by the Israeli state, by the Israeli military. That's at the root of it. All of these are symptoms of an oppression that exists for the Palestinian people. And some of you might remember a United States president called Bill Clinton, who used to have a slogan on his campaign wall. I'm not advocating or saying there's anything nice about him, but he had a slogan on his campaign wall. And his slogan on the campaign wall was, "It's the economy, stupid." In other words, he was telling the people who were campaigning for him at that time that was the issue that they had to address when they were talking to people around the campaigning front. And I want to say that, in a sense, the occupation is the issue. Because all of these things that I've described, and there are many more that I could detail, all of those are a consequence of the occupation by the Israelis of Palestinian lands and the refusal to negotiate a settlement. And the reason, and obviously we'll discuss this, and this will be part of, I'm sure, of the exchange that we have later, the reason that Israel has that intransigence is because it has a government that refuses to negotiate and to recognize the Palestinians, and recognize the Palestinians' right to determine their own leadership and their own negotiators, but insist that they want people who they regard as acquiescent and compliant for any future settlement.